presenting their work today with us. I would like to remind to all of the presenters that they will have 10 minutes to present their work, and then we will have some time for questions and discussion about the subjects that will be raised. So first, I will pass the floor to Domniki Vagiati, who will present us her action research in order to familiarize children with public space. And the general title is Child and Public Space. So Domniki, the floor is yours.
Hi everyone, good morning. I am Domniki Vagiati and I'm here to present you part of my bachelor thesis about children and public space, which I completed in 2019 in Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. You. So first of all, I would like to share some information about myself. I don't know, I can move it. I'm an early childhood educator and a performer, and my pedagogical specializations are related to entrepreneurial learning and project management in education and in the integration of arts in educational processes. I'm doing my master about art and education, and I'm working as the project manager of the Wonder School project in Magia environmental organization, for which I will tell you more about later. I will start my presentation with some facts. Fact number 1. When we talk about children, there are 4 types of public spaces. First, we have spaces like schools. Help me. Thank you. Okay, first we have spaces like schools, which are designed especially for children, but they disconnect them from the rest of the city. Then we have sectors which provide interaction between children and adults, but also distance them from the rest of sociocultural life of the city. There are areas without special planning for the active presence of children, although this would be possible, for example, neighborhood or central areas. And then finally, we have spaces without provision for the presence of children at all. The above leads to the idea that children can act safely only in spatially designed spaces, and city itself is not a friendly environment for children. Fact number 2, things that we forgot about childhood. Children need a different treatment from adults as they don't have the same experience and knowledge, and each stage of their development has different characteristics. They really enjoy expressing their feelings, sharing thoughts with adults, and bringing their ideas to life. And finally, when inspired by a supporting environment, they can work together and fix problems effectively by themselves. Fact number 3, the neighborhood. According to bibliography, the neighborhood functions as an intermediate place between home and the city. It reinforces the transition from home familiarity to the challenges of public life. It activates a sense of community and encourages active participation in sociocultural and urban life of the city. Here are some photos from the collective dinner that we organize in our neighborhood initiative and the construction of the first pocket park in Greece. So from the above, the questions that arises is how art, with its different forms and dimension, influences children's relation with public space. I come up with the idea of setting up an artistic workshop in the public library of Thessaloniki, and for 8 months we had weekly meetings with 20 children, 6 to 10. The main idea was to get them accustomed to the public space of the library, through musical and theatrical activities, and then put into practice their skills which they developed during the workshop when they are exposed to the open public space of the neighborhood. So now let me introduce you to my neighborhood in Alexandros Volou Street in the historical city center of Thessaloniki. As you can see, everything is covered by building and there aren't any open or green spaces for children to play in. Here is the city library, children's schools. Here you can see the only playground, the main square, and the pocket park. In the 4th month of the workshop, we decided to have a walk in the neighborhood and explore its surroundings. This is the route that we followed. I marked with the stars the point that we stopped to keep notes. And from these notes, on our return to the library, we wrote a poem. Children focus on the gray colors of the neighborhood, on the bad smells, and on the noises of the cars. You can have a look to a poem. Because of the poem now, in the 6th month of the workshop, we decided to write a play and talk about the neighborhood. And without really understanding it, I'm in charge of a participatory artistic design process. And I have to admit that at this point, I didn't really understood how amazing this opportunity was for children and how they really wanted to be heard. In the end of the workshop, they confided that those meetings were their favorites. Briefly, the topic of the play was that children was unhappy with their neighborhood and adults systematically ignored their every efforts to express their views. Children recognized that they need their cooperation in order to solve the problem, so they organized a big demonstration to the streets to invite them in a meeting at the playground. Unfortunately, no one came, so they had to act more drastically. Children raised their dolls on the roof of the houses to shock their parents and to be heard. Eventually, they worked together to change the area, and the scene is transferred on stage in real time. During the play, children are coloring the buildings and change the surroundings. And then everyone was celebrating about the new neighborhood. So at the beginning and in the end of the workshop, I asked them to fill in the same questionnaire. To a scale from 1 to 5, as you can see in my presentation, children evaluate the library and the open public space of the neighborhood. As you can see, about public space, I had 12 questions in the 4 categories that you can see. And if you look at this board, you will understand that at the end of the workshop, children, they believe that their neighborhood is even more dangerous than they thought at the beginning, and they don't really want to walk alone there, and they don't prefer to play outside, but they believe that it's preferable for them to play indoor in closed spaces. And at the same time, they want more, and if you see the numbers, in some cases the same, and in some cases even more, to act and participate in alternative activities there. And that's maybe how the workshop and our meetings influence them to build a connection with the neighborhood. So following the motto of this conference, this workshop was an amazing experience for me. It made me realize and understand some crucial challenges about public space. And in order to transform these challenges to potentials, we team up with Magia Environmental Organization, which is based in Thessaloniki, and together we saw again the big picture of the neighborhood. Going back to children's school, as you can see, the schoolyard is cemented all over and there are no alternative uses of the space. Knowing that schoolyard is the first public space that children experience, we decide to design the Wonder School project. We educate school communities, children, parents, and teachers to take an active stance in environmental issues, and then all together, as a community, we collectively redesign the schoolyard to a green direction. Here are some photos of the participatory design workshop that we have the last 2 weeks. I believe that we as adults, parents, teachers, community builders, I don't know, project managers, we, as people in a way that have a leading role to children's life, we have to create places in time and in space to encourage and support them, to raise their voice and bring their ideas to life. And in my opinion, and we can discuss about it, this is the only way to move forward, to allow ourselves to reconnect with our childhood and to talk about sustainability and resilience and somehow tackle climate changes. Children are the next actors of our world, and we can support them with our knowledge and our experience. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Domniki, for this inspiring presentation. And I think it's a topic to discuss about later, whether children are, let's say, the artists of this world, and we can use art to communicate with them and to make them express their ideas about participatory design processes and about the city and life itself. So thank you again. And now we pass to Ioanna, Kotti, and Vily Mylona, who will present us their work based in Kypseli and titled by JamRoad.
Hello. Thank you for having us here among such remarkable colleagues. I'm Ioanna Kotti, and this is my colleague Vily Mylona. We are here to present you JamRoad, an initiative intervention concerning a construction of urban seats and outdoor musical instruments on a human scale in the pedestrian street of Rinia in Kypseli. The intervention was funded by Athens Development and Destination Management Agency under the program of This is Athens Poly Square. The implementation is divided in two phases. The first phase had a duration of 2 months. It was when we finalized the concept of our intervention based on the values of creativity, game, participation, recycling, and inclusion. Based on these values, we created a collaboration with schools, social cooperatives specialized in the use of recycled materials and toys design, urban planners, and an agriculturalist. The intervention is located in Kypseli, in the center of Athens, in between the streets of Kypseli and Spetson, a really central point, even though we could say that the urban environment in this area was quite distressed, and the public infrastructure was really degraded. Here are some images and perspectives of the pedestrian road before the materialization of the intervention. During the concept, we split it, the pedestrian road in 3 different functional zones. The lane of the urban green, the lane of the urban furniture, and the lane of the movement. There's great value to say that around the pedestrian street, 4 schools are located. and even though there is a high vehicle movement. Here are some images of the brainstorming procedure. We wanted to create toys in human scale, toys that could be used both from children and adults, that could have an impact in the soundscape of the area, which we said was really noisy, especially during the morning hours, and create some urban benches, new meeting points in the pedestrian street, and upgrade the whole environment.
Hello. So the second phase is the implementation of the project. This phase lasted for 4 months, and during this process, we developed all the technical parameters of the items. We priced in detail all the materials based on the call that we applied for. We finalized the technical details of the construction, ensured the security of all items as children would have played there. We developed the engagement actions and the participatory design, and finally we proceeded with the construction. Here you can see the master plan and our idea of how this street in front of the schools will change. We designed some green areas, creative cultural activities, which are the toys in human scale that Ioanna told you before, and some chill out areas and the meeting points. During the construction, the master plan changed a little bit. We moved a few centimeters left or right the installment of the toys because we had some problems with the ground. Details, doesn't matter, but the main idea is the one that you see on the screen. For the engagement and participation of the citizens, we developed 2 main actions in order to inform them and involve them in the process. We went door to door and gave leaflets to the citizens, to the dwellers of the neighborhood, and conducted one-to-one conversation with them and the small businesses. And we presented finally the project to the local council, from which we took our approval to proceed with the implementation of the project. It was a necessary process. But for us, the main participatory action was the collective mapping that we did in the schools that, with the students of the schools that are located in the pedestrian street of our intervention. The workshop involved Greek and refugee students from the integration class. They were way older than the children that you included in your research. During the workshop, we initiated a conversation around public space. We briefly explained what is the public space from the perspective of urban planners, maybe, not teachers. Which are the elements that we might see in public spaces, what are the differences with the private, which are our rights to the city as young dwellers. And then the students took the floor. We encouraged them to imagine their ideal neighborhood and invited them to destroy and or build whatever they were willing in their neighborhood. They had a sizable table, map on the wall, and they described their neighborhood based on their imagination. And this is the result. The aim of the process was to explore the sense of the place they live every day and the sense of belonging. This process was particularly creative and inclusive for the migrant students, as they had the opportunity to co-design the public spaces in their neighborhood along with their classmates, their local classmates. The last phase of this process, of the second phase, was the construction, the actual construction. Here you can see the preparation of the human scale toys, which are instruments in the maker spaces of the social cooperatives that was part of the consortium. And the actual build and installment of the benches on the pedestrian street. Then we added some beautiful flowers and bushes in front of the school, and we upgraded the lighting of the street, which is not planned at the initial proposal, but it came up as a need during the participatory actions that we made. Here you can see the final toys, musical instruments. It is nice. The seesaw has some glass balls inside, and when you move it, it sounds like the sounds of the sea. The benches and the plants and the green that we added in the street. And I want to finish with this. During the implementation, of course, we had some obstacles to deal with. First, we faced delays due to administrative malfunctions and the local elections. These two aspects created for us a suffocated situation with strict deadlines and the reschedulement of the planned activities. Other than the administrative obstacles, there was a vocal minority in the neighborhood that did not want to participate at the intervention at all. In fact, we dealt with the NIMBY, not in my backyard phenomena, which is quite popular, when a couple of citizens claim that the intervention will attract the youth and homeless people who will raise the noise and the criminality in the area. It was a challenge for us to involve them more in the process, so we invited them to an open discussion and invite them to give them the opportunity to give an alternative. They were not very interested in participating in this, so we were impressed when they suggested to transfer the project a few blocks away, which is with a fact that a proposal that did not actually solve the problem of criminality and noise, but as long as it was not in front of their houses, and to move them in Kypseli Market, an already popular meeting point. And for us, it would be nice even if they suggested to cancel the intervention at all, but they were not interested. Just saying, don't do it in front of my door, just move it a few blocks away. So yeah, this is from us. I guess questions will be at the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I find it very interesting that you ended your presentation with the obstacles and the difficulties that the project can face. And I think that it is also a very important note to discuss about and to have in mind when we begin such participatory processes and we talk about public space and public speech in a way. So thank you very much. And now I pass the floor to Juan Chacon, representing Zuloark, and he will present us a participatory project about cultural heritage and public space in Berlin under the name of leben. Juan?
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. Yes, I'm gonna talk to you about leben. leben is an educational network. It's born in 2018 as a collaboration between Zuloark. We are an architecture collective based in different countries in Europe. And iCollective is an artist and participatory also collective based in Berlin and Argentina. And these are the initiatives that propose to the city of Berlin and the Department of Art and Culture, Kultur Mitte Berlin, to develop this project. So we had these two partners like Zuloark and iCollective as private collective initiatives and public bodies such as the Senate of Berlin and this Department of Art and Culture and Participation. And we create this association that is like repeating every year in the district of Mitte. with the questions that were rising at the beginning. How does the life of young people relate to the history of the city? And how can these young people participate actively in the development of it? So Erbe, the name, is like a kind of composed of different German words. Erbe mean heritage. Erleben is like to experience something. And also Beleben is to animate, no? Like and the name Erbeleben is like a combination of these different particles that the German language facilitate. Everything happens in the center, in the heart of Berlin. I think like maybe some of you know a little bit the city. When you go to Google Maps and you do a screenshot, the Brandenburger Tor is the first thing that appears. So and that's where I want to talk about heritage, and then what is the perspective that we from Zuloark, from iCollective, and in the project we are trying to arise, what means heritage for us. So we have this kind of heritage that traditionally in the cities they are seen as something that you need to observe and you need to preserve as something that belongs to the past and not to the future. And normally you go there and nothing's happened. No? It's something that you see some tourists and you see people taking pictures. The lights are beautiful, like Brandenburger Tor. And you have other kind of cultural heritage or architectural heritage that they are part of the history of the city, but they have like a different meaning also for the citizens. Like in this case, I brought the Haus der Statistik, like is the old GDR former statistic building where all the data of the Communist Party was collected and managed. And now it's becoming like a huge participatory building where a lot of initiatives are taking part of it, activating and trying to understand what is this heritage going to be in the future. So understanding heritage as something alive, not this kind of things that we need to encapsulate in a picture from the past. So Erbe is moving in this territory. And what we do is like we try to bring like urbanism and public space, city development topics and put together different schools with artists, architects, and urban professionals to create like interdisciplinary projects in order to bring like more urban rights, more participation, and how we can co-shape the city. So everything starts with every year we have a different topic, and every year the different professionals, the city professionals that they are involved in the project. So we have like a kind of database or a kind of, we are more than 20 artists, architects, and professionals that have been working in the project over the years. We select together with them, actually normally it's their proposal, in this district of Mitte in Berlin, different places that they have like something regarding to heritage, like or a urban controversy. And then we represent them as a kind of, we try to get into the history of them and then do some activities around them. In this case, I took some of the examples like Alexanderplatz, Alexa, that is like a mall that it was built in 2000, Haus der Statistik, this former statistic building, the Charité, that is the big hospital in Berlin, or on the right, Holzmarkt, that is a kind of initiative like also born in the 2000s from the club culture from Berlin. So normally how it works is every year we have like a different schools, these topics. This year we are working about like what means smart cities, not the smart city of this kind of digitalization. So what is a city, what makes a city to be smart? We choose some places and we have like these artists that sometimes they have time, sometimes they don't have time. And then we create like a kind of, at the beginning, gathering together to understand which school is going to work with which artists, about which topics, and then they launch. So we have every year simultaneously like 5 or 6 different groups of people that they are working and creating these projects, and it's always the result between a collaboration of these professionals with one class of one school of the district. And there are many activities. So normally everything starts like exploration. I brought specifically this picture because you see a statue in the middle of the city that normally you cannot touch them, and Erbe allows like the children to climb on them. And this is something that the city of Berlin is very aware in the sense of how heritage needs to be alive and not something that we only preserve and look from away. Gatherings in public space to reflect about the places that we are exploring, and also in a second phase, go more into hands-on, no? Like also the students, because this is, as I say at the beginning, an educational network, they learn new skills, so they have like the theoretical background of the places, but also through this artistic, architectural, or professional work, they need to develop skills and other ways of doing things. So they go into the class and they do things that they normally don't do. Like in this case, they were building like a structure that it was a theater, or sometimes with their body. And at the end, there is always like this kind of installations in public space that normally or sometimes there are like urban specific actions that they are like from a short period, like these ones, like activating these places that they were researched at the beginning. And sometimes they are like more like small furniture. The children, they are between 8 years old and 15 years old, so it's very different, like the approach that the artists and we should have with each different group. And then it's very important that at the end we have this kind of exchange moment or exhibition moment as a way of like with two aims. One aim is like there is a moment that is very educational for the groups and for the schools. So the children seeing all the works from the other schools, because these workshops happen like in the whole city. So it means like they don't cross each other so often. So this moment is the moment that they cross, so they can exchange between the schools, and also they see their own work exposed in a place in a professional way. So they understand like that what they did is something relevant. It's not only a school project. And then you have here, this is the theater that they were building at the beginning, that the topic was, in this case, about this Holzmark, and then they create the history of this place with the children, the artists that they did that, and then they had like this kind of representation, but also it's this gathering together and these exchanges, not only between us and the different schools and the different artists, but also with the public institutions that we were talking at the beginning. So it was very important from the beginning that there is a kind of transfer between what we are doing and what the institutions are expecting. So this kind of vertical collaboration is very important for this kind of processes. And in the city of Berlin, we are trying to do it all together. That's why in this presentation, although I'm of the part of Zuloark, I think it's important that to make this clear, no? That this is impossible without really public empowerment and public engagement on the process for having this exchange of knowledge, how then the children can express their ideas, and there are this moment that some of the authorities, the technical authorities, they understand what are the children thinking about the different places that we are working with. And then at the end of the result, like sometimes it's like this, like a little bit mess, but then there is this moment of collecting all this information. So my question is now to Athens, like how does the life of young people of the city of Athens can relate to the history? And how can these young people also be part of the development of Athens? So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Juan. I think many collectives and groups here in Athens as well tackle this subject of how young people can relate to cultural heritage through participatory processes and through all these vertical connections that you pointed out with local authorities and local communities. So maybe if there is time, we can mention a lot of examples of this kind of processes that happen in Athens, and maybe exchange also point of view, because I think we are very close. So I would like to remind also to the people that are watching us from the Zoom platform that there is a Q&A sections where you can write your questions to the presenters, and that questions can lead to a discussion in the very end. And last but not least, I would like to welcome Katerina Protonotariou on behalf of Urban Dig Project, who is going to present us the work that Urban Dig Project did in Omonia And the title of the presentation is Omonia, a place of urban coexistence, artistic expression and participatory action. Katerina, the floor is yours.
Hello. I'm here to present you what Nadia just described, how Omonia was perceived as and turned for a while as a place of coexistence through artistic expression and participatory actions. I will present you this experience on behalf of Urban Dig project that I, Matina Magkou, that is not here, and Nadia as well, are members, and of Fanis Papageorgiou from the University of Patras. So, how cultural and artistic practices can support urban coexistence and participation in the contemporary city. So let's see very quickly these two notions. So, participation is perceived as participating in activities and or taking initiative in designing and implementing activities, but also as participating in co-forming and or active listening views that are not the ones that we usually listen to through the dominant narrations. And urban coexistence is, on the one hand, perceived as the everyday interaction and relations development at a local level, the actual interaction meaning. And on the other hand, as reducing distance from the other, who is many times perceived as dangerous and hostile from the dominant narration, especially in areas that are considered notorious and dangerous, as the case of Omonia that we are going to explore. So before going into the specific project that had to do with Omonia, I would like to tell you a few words about how Urban Dig project works. So we are a group of people that are deriving from the arts, urban planning, architecture, culture, education. And what we usually do is that we visit a specific place for a specific duration, aiming at a specific result, which is usually a site-specific performance or another cultural product, which as a goal activates a node of actions that are open to all and horizontal. And when I say open to all, it means that other people can also come and suggest activities, not only participate, research, artistic and community activities. And also in the end, we usually have a rich bottom-up archive of local stories and views in every area. This is some moments of our activities in the past, from performances, tours, games, discussions, mappings. And let's go now at the case of Omonia. So as many of you already know, Omonia is a very central yet very neglected until recently, we will see about that, node of Athens. It has passed through many phases from 1999 to until 2016, from being considered decadent and criminalized to transforming into a very attractive place for shop owners, considering the Olympics of 2004, and again from 2005 until 2015 that we visited the area. Omonia was in a constant state of decadence, while having been going through 9 different design reconstructions, and now is in its 10th version. So Omonia Square, while being a square, it was mostly and still is a kind of a transit place where people do not stay there but just pass by. And a place that is considered to be dangerous and notorious, especially at night. Urban Dig project, with Urban Dig project, we visited Omonia in November 2015, and in 2016 we actually settled there. In order to proceed, we needed to understand Omonia beyond the dominant narrations that wanted the place to be just transit and notorious. So what we needed to do was, first of all, to understand who the inhabitants of the place were. So And by inhabitants, I mean people that are actually active in the area, because Omonia has almost no residents. There are no houses around. It's a place for people to pass by and to work. So, and for tourists, because there are many hotels. So we actually focused in two main groups. The first group were the shop owners that one could find at the galleries around the square, and that they were mainly men around their 50s and 60s. And the second group were the migrants that used to hang out on the square, mostly males from the Middle Asia between their 20s and 30s. Of course, there were the many passerbys, and always the people that were interested in our activities and actually came to inhabit the space along with us. Something that is really interesting here is about the first two groups that I mentioned in the beginning. It was that these two groups inhabited two totally different spaces on the area. So the group of migrants, the informal group of migrants was inhabiting the main square. As you can see in the middle, it's like a concrete island in the middle of the traffic, that it's not connected at all with its surroundings, while the shop owners were at the periphery, at the galleries around the square. So what we needed to do was to actually get connected to these groups. We did many activities. I would like to refer to some examples that I think are more interesting. So one of the first activities we did in order to get connected to the shop owners, which let's say were the dominant group of the area, meaning that they were there for many years and they have seen Omonia through many phases, was this one. A small group of us visited some shops around the area and asked people to share their stories through semi-structured interviews. In order to persuade them to do that, we told them that we were going to transform these stories into songs, which was something that actually happened. And so we managed to gain the trust of these, let's say, key people. So we continued doing several activities, research, artistic, and community, in order to understand what was hidden in the place and also attract more people to join our activities. And this, for example, some research activities that we did were mapping activities, semi-structured group interviews. We handed over questionnaires and then we discussed about them. So these activities also fed new activities that had to do with our findings. For example, one finding that was very interesting was that the group of the shop owners that was around the square, since the state was not really supporting them in solving the problems in the area, meaning poor infrastructure, problems with lighting, with cleanliness, with the low traffic in the market. They had formed actually informal groups and informal collaborations with each other in order to solve these problems and support each other. And its gallery was kind of a village, something that you don't expect to find in central Athens. On the other hand, the square that until then was considered empty was fully inhabited by migrants that were not visible by the dominant narration. For example, I want to refer to two activities that we organized connected to these findings, amongst the many activities that we organized. So one activity that we organized, for example, more than one time, was to an alternative tours where we could share these findings with people that didn't visit Omonia other than just passing by. So we organized some music tours where we sang the songs of the shop owners, and we created the circumstances under which people could talk with the shop owners themselves and listen to other views about the area. And something else that we did was that since the migrant populations of the square, it was a group that it was not easy. It was not easy to find them and connect with them repeatedly. We started holding activities on the square and kinds of activities that they were being inclusive. So we did a mask creation workshop for the carnival on the square, meaning that something that we don't have to talk, you can do things with your hands, we can create. And an origami workshop with very easy creations for the final performance that we did. So this was the one part of our activities, and the other part was the final performance that was actually an artistic action that wanted to share all the alternative narrations and stories that we have collected so far through a way that could reach more people and create new experiences in a space that has very specific significations. So I will also share with you some examples because the findings were many. So, for example, the finding of the people needing to share their problems and the state not being present to support them was expressed through the performance through a kind of performative manifestation who communicated all these problems to the audience, or the fact that there were underrepresented groups that were invisible from the dominant narrations was transformed into artistic action through presenting several versions of these characters and making them visible. However, what it was, I think, the most important thing in the final performance, the final site-specific performance that we held there, was that it signified a kind of celebration on maybe the most neglected area, square, sorry, of the central Athens, when music theater and people met for a while. The shop owners, the migrants, the temporary urban dig community, the passerbys met for a while and stayed on Omonia Square. There were people that said that it's the first time I'm actually standing on this square. So to sum it up, the goals of Urban Dig Omonia were actually to build a collective alternative narration, mainly composed by the area's inhabitants, us included, to change minds about the area's character towards the aforementioned narration that dominant narrations overshadow, and to create a community of various interested parts that are actively involved and interact with each other and the area. So I would say that these goals were pretty much met, but for each group, it was something else that was important. For the shop owners, it was important that there was a group of people there trying to change the perception about this area, and that brings new people. For the migrants, that it was the only group that we didn't manage to find to ask and hand them questionnaires because of their situation. The conclusion was that they really enjoyed the fact of socializing and feeling included on the spot that they also hung around. For the community that was more actively involved, it was mostly the relationship and active participation. We are talking about pretty much 150 people involved in the activities we held, not the part of the site-specific performance. And regarding the audience, it was observed a certain change of perception regarding the area after the performance. So before concluding, I would like to make a very small comment about Omonia today, because what happened after our work there, our presence there, was that after some years, suddenly a water fountain made its appearance without any one of us knowing, which was actually the exactly opposite of any form of participation. And it was the 10th version of this square since the 1930s. And I would like to close through seeing a little bit how artistic practices for participation and meaningful coexistence are contributing towards a post-growth society. So a post-growth society requires selective degrowth, where policy decisions are made democratically about which sectors of the economy need to degrow and which ones need to expand. Fragile abundance is the key pillar of degrowth. And the most important thing here is that people experience abundance through collective sufficiency, in part due to basic need fulfillment, and feelings of eudaimonia, happiness, and subjective well-being that result for fulfilling non-material life goals. So in a small scale, this is achieved through personal relationships, family, and friendship, but through a larger scale, it is achieved through public meetings, festivals, sports, club meetings. So relational goods can be seen as a specific kind of public good. And other radical concepts relating to growth include democratic decision-making, autonomy, production for use, voluntary rather than wage labor, gifts rather than profit sharing, sharing the commons, and experimental forms of collaborative living and being together. I would like to close saying that we need to rethink the economy as a site of ethical interdependence, which is a process that presupposes to imagine the becoming of community economies, motivating by concerns for meaningful coexistence, surviving together well and equitably, participating, distributing surplus to enrich social and environmental health, encountering others in ways that support their well-being as well as ours, maintaining, replenishing, and growing our natural and cultural commons through various ways as this one, and investing our wealth so that future generations can live well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Katerina. Me as being part of this team as well, Urban Dig Project, and having dealt with Omonia together with Katerina and the rest of the team, I don't have many things to say, but I would like to pose a question to the panel because it's something that is also for us important. What do all these kind of interventions leave behind as a trace? Because in case of Omonia, I think it left back a new way of perception for the people living and working there, because we know some of them pass through Omonia and think about the performance we did or think about the workshops that we did. But our vision was that all these people could meet together and form a new community, which was not actually achieved. So yeah, I would like to ask you as well, for your projects, what do they leave behind or what you envision to leave behind? And yeah, what is the contribution of a sustainable future of all these kind of interventions? So I will start with this question, and then I will pass the floor to the audience if there are questions, because we do have, let's say, 20 minutes for the end of the session. Whoever wants to.
It was very challenging to us, and we were quite stressed because the duration of our project was for 1 year, and we knew that from the beginning. And it's something very important because you start with a participatory process, and then you expect to continue this consortium that is created during this process. In our case, we had actually two kinds of intervention. One was the participatory design, which I think created some connection with the students, the migrant students, and the Greek students, let's say. They're Greek, actually, not. Anyway. And the other one was the furniture, the urban furniture, which is still there, not in a very good condition, but we pass by with Ioanna and we see people hanging out, chilling, really enjoying the infrastructure that we created. But the fact that our engagement action was mainly with students didn't allow us to go further and develop even more the participatory actions, because they left the school eventually. So for them it was actually an experience that brought them closer to what public space might mean to them. But in reality, the actual partnership didn't last. But we gained experience from this action, and also the students had the opportunity to have a different view of how they can intervene in their own neighborhood. And the materials, the physical infrastructure is still there, not in a good condition, but we see people sitting on the benches and steal the materials from the toys. Which actually true. I mean, the public infrastructure is there and it belongs to everyone, so they might have the right to take whatever they like.
Does anyone else want to answer the question of sustainability and future?
Well, yes, that's a very important question, I think. For example, I'm thinking the case of Omonia that I'm just presented. I think it was a very, since Omonia, it is a very complex place. Well, every place is complex, but Omonia, meaning that it is a place that many people can recognize themselves being connected to it, but not in a very direct way, as for example, one is connected to his or her neighborhood. So there are not, but no, let's talk a little bit more general. I think it has to do with also with duration and how often you are there and how, in which way you get connected with people that are also very interested in this place, and how this call to participate is a call for active participation, meaning giving also the opportunity to creating a culture of taking initiative as well. So, so I think, of course, it has to do with this, but then the other question arises: in order to be able to do big projects with big duration and constant presence, you need resources. So who gives these resources, and who affects in the end what you are going to do? I don't know, it's a very, it's not easy to answer this. It's something that it's a constant question for me. However, I think in more in other kinds of places, for example, I'm thinking we have also done before Omonia another project in Durguti, in the migrant area of Durguti in Neos Kosmos, which is a kind of an introvert area with a kind of specific characteristic. So it was much more clear there to identify people that were connected with the area, all the historical layers, and the duration of the project was 3 years, while Omonia's were pretty much 1. So it was, what happened was different there. It was much more intense. So it left more things behind, I think. However, changing perceptions about places, I think it's an important race. Thank you.
I can also add something to this. I believe that when we talk about the sustainability of a project, communities and education is the key. We really have to take under consideration how we'll help participants to engage in this process and how we will motivate them through educational processes or through our methodologies that we use to motivate them to be more active in the topic of the project that we implement, so that they can also continue somehow and create a project that has a life itself, and they don't need us anymore after the end of the project.
I would like to add also some thoughts about our experience and every single team experience from participatory design. The most important part for me was that during the participatory plan, we insert the concept of destroying to the children, because we have all realized that participatory design is now a trend, a good trend, but it's also a mean from the state and the institutions to gain a consent from the citizen and make their own experiences, bad experience from the city, less political. So for us, it was really important to transmit to the children the idea and the experience that the city, beside the common spaces, the public and the green spaces, also creates limitations, and it's really fine to destroy them and make this space of their own.
Well, if everybody talks and you look at me like this, then I need to say something. I was thinking like different perspective. One is like, I think like the continuation of this kind of process, like each of them that I saw, it needs always like a kind of ownership, or so my friend Rosario says like, who takes care of the dynamics? So who is taking care of all the groups that are here around? So I understand, like, for example, in Omonia, what you did, that after 3 years you get exhausted because like the resources are very low. You are like against like trying to activate something that is very resistant, and this happens in every community normally at the beginning. But there's suddenly there are like some owners that they say, I'm engaged. So this generational kind of transition is very important. Like how after 2 years the people get tired. So it's good that that there is a continuation that is like this kind of energy, like new things are happening, because if not, some cases it fades out. The other thing that I was thinking, related for what you just talked about participation, is a topic that in Spain we had like many years ago, and in Germany the people they don't talk about. So they don't reclaim participation because it's a must. So it's something that is implied already. So they already exist the structures to make this happen. So I think it's nice that it's happening here newly, because it means like maybe in 10 years is something that is more established in the society, Like the path is always complicated because there are always these juristic things, and then how you engage public bodies, how is funding, how you create funding structures. So in Germany, they were working on that since many, many years, and then it's something that is very established, like how public funding goes in every institution, and how the institutions they are independent, and how you relate and control this budget. So this is a very complex and bureaucratic system, but somehow makes that a lot of initiatives can have like resources to develop the activities. So I think it's nice that this question is arising in Athens right now, and it's a matter of keep going, like, and a little bit trying to find the ways to create more people aware of this issue, and that the cities are better through that because they come. So what happened, or what I understand also in Madrid, is like this process that involves a lot of agents in a lot of phases with a lot of participation, that the participation is not about the citizenship, but also about the association, about us, that we are also citizens as architects or artists developing our cities. So the way of participating is this multi-scalar, as I said, and this is what in Berlin somehow we are very lucky and grateful, no? That we can have like this these public bodies that somehow they are engaged to this kind of initiatives.
Thank you. I will ask if the audience here or the digital one has questions to pose to the presenters.
Dora? De. Hi, hello to all of you. It's very nice like seeing you here and listening to all of your projects. It's really inspiring and actually I'm thinking that I admire a lot of of you and of what you're doing because I think it demands a lot of courage to do things like this. I mean, I haven't watched all your presentation to be firm, but I believe that most of you are doing your projects in Greece, and Juan was the only one who presented something in Berlin. Yeah, it's very inspiring to see. It actually makes me think that I have known a very different city from what I knew. Like I live in Madrid too, and what I always say about Greece is like in Madrid, it's a city that there's a lot of participatory design, and as Juan said, it's something it's already integrated there. So when they ask me about again, where are these practices in Greece? I was like, like Greece, this is not such a thing. It doesn't exist. So coming here now, some years later, and seeing that so many people of you are like activated and organized and are already doing stuff, it's very inspiring and like hopeful for the future. So there are some thoughts that have come to my head. I've also worked in participatory processes, but in Spain. So on the first hand, I am thinking about this, like how different countries, like in an institutional level, but also like in the level of a mindset of the people understand participation and how easy it is for the people to engage with that, like exactly what you were talking about before, like how easy it is to engage a community to something you're proposing. And I was about to make this question, but now I changed my mind. I want to make another one. I'm actually having a philosophical dilemma about proposal versus listening. I think that also I think it's an architect syndrome. I don't know how of you are here are architects, but speaking by myself, I think we do this a lot. Like we have the host syndrome. Like every time we are doing something, we need to be like the perfect hosts. We have to make like everything, we have to prepare everything so well, and people have to come and they need to have a very good time, and they need to have like this should be the experience of their life. And of course, what you said before, we were hoping that things would have like a life by themselves. Like what a pity that they didn't have like the projects we proposed then didn't have like more. They died, let's say, too soon, and we were envisioning something more. First, I'm thinking like maybe this is like the host syndrome, something like okay, some things are maybe destined to die, and then just the small period of time that they did something was actually very meaningful. Maybe people were not ready to keep on working on that, but they just needed like this small sample of, oh, look what we can do in the public space. So this is the first part of the dilemma. And the second one is like, it was proposal versus listening. How could we do, instead of directly proposing and inviting people to come and join what we propose and what we have designed, how could we propose by listening, by going directly to the communities and asking? I mean, I'm not saying that you're not already doing it. I'm just having this, I think it was interesting to share these thoughts with you. How could we design by listening?
Thank you for your question. I believe that this is a process that going forward and back and forward and back, and we have somehow to integrate it in the process when we design something. And because, as you said, in Greece, we are not used to implement these methodologies, and we also, as children and as adults, we didn't experience that as well. Somehow we have to deal and we have to accept, and I think it's okay to understand that we also learn through this process, and if we admit to participants as well that we don't know everything, and we try also, and we want to evaluate things and return back, and we need you, and we have a role to lead or coordinate or facilitate something, but we are together if we want to go forward and move forward. I think that's the only way to, I don't know, challenge it somehow and deal with this. At least this is what we try, and I believe that it's okay to say that we don't know everything and we have to go back again and listen to you. And it's not easy because we also have to educate ourselves to do that.
I agree a lot with you. You talked like an educator as you are. So yeah, we really have to educate ourselves. And in our case, we went at the beginning as expert because we had to propose something in order to get the resources to implement our project. So we did a work observing the area that we wanted to intervene, but in reality, the actual participatory actions happened after we designed we came up with a concept and designed an initial plan. So a few things we were able to change afterwards. And this is in my opinion, this was not the best process to follow. But this is something that in Greece now is developing very, very much. I mean, we are in Greece in a 3 days conference for participatory design. And I think that means a lot. And we have this conference because after a few years, there are initiatives that have, and people that have the experience to develop the do's and don'ts in these processes. So to me, the most important is to get feedback. Keep a small basket, we say in Greek. I don't know if there's an expression in English for that. But the most important is to get feedback from the citizens and don't act like we are experts. Okay, we might be urban planners, but we are mainly citizens. So we have, and do not deny that we have the tools to develop a questionnaire or a collective mapping process or whatever we have learned through our experience and our studies or our jobs. But, you know, make it very clear to the participants, not the participants, to the people that you work with, that you need their help. And this is something that we created because we know how to do it, but all the process is up to us, I think. Yeah.
If there is no other comment, I will have to sum it up somehow. So thank you very much for making this Saturday morning interesting and inspiring. I think that this session's contribution to the conference somehow was the presentation of different aspects of how art could be a means of engagement and a means of communication with several communities and several contexts, and actually through art make a proposition about urban life and urban planning and urban coexistence. I think that it's a nice thing that those subjects have arisen, such as let's see participation not only as means of gaining consent, but as an active process that happens and should engage more and more equally, more and more people. I think it's nice that we have the point of view of Juan in Berlin and Madrid and Spain, that all these kind of things are structurally part of how citizens work and are part of public life. We also have to think about the question of how we as experts come and propose, and what could happen if we proposed by listening, and if we make ourselves more in the position of citizens rather than in the position of experts. And I think also an important point was that the future of a project, of a city project, has also to do with a caretaking of the dynamics around it, and key communities that take on action, and by action we also mean destroy, denial, and all these kind of things. So I think that these were the subjects that we tackle. Of course, the role of the educational field and how children could be educated in this direction. Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you very much for being here. And we move forward to the next morning session. Thank you.
Thank you.